You've been lying there for a while now, eyes open, maybe staring at the ceiling, maybe listening to the quiet hum of the night. Sleep feels distant tonight, doesn't it? Sometimes the mind keeps wandering, back through the years, through memories that feel as close as yesterday. That's all right. You're here now, and you don't need to rush anywhere. Take a slow breath in and let it go. There's no schedule, no noise, no one asking for your attention. Just the soft rhythm of your own breathing and the gentle sound of a story. Maybe tonight it will carry you somewhere familiar, somewhere warm. Back to a time when life was a little simpler, a little quieter, back to the early days of television when the world first began to bloom in color. You might remember that feeling, the way the neighborhood would gather around one house, the glow from a single screen painting the walls in shades no one had ever seen before. It was the 1970s, and something magical was happening right there in your living room. Before color TV, evenings were softer shades of gray. Families huddled close, the sound of static and laughter mingling in the air. Then one day it arrived, the box that could show the world in color. It was more than just technology. It was a doorway, a new way of seeing. Tonight, let's step quietly through that doorway together. Let's return to that living room where you can almost smell the popcorn, hear the click of the channel dial, and feel the warm hum of the screen. You don't need to think about tomorrow right now. Just let your mind drift gently toward that moment, your first time seeing color television. The reds seemed brighter than life. The blues looked deep enough to swim in. And maybe, just maybe, the world seemed a little more hopeful that night. As we begin this story, remember, you don't have to stay awake to listen. If your eyes grow heavy, that's perfectly fine. The story will wait for you, just like an old friend sitting on the porch at dusk. So settle in, let the quiet wash over you. And if you enjoy these soft journeys into the past, these little trails of memory that help you rest, you're welcome to subscribe to Sleepy Trails. That way, whenever sleep feels far away, you'll always have a gentle place to come back to. Now, let's begin the story. The year was 1970. You were still young then, full of wonder, full of plans. The world was changing fast, but on quiet evenings, life still slowed down. You might remember the scent of summer grass through an open window, or the sound of a screen door creaking as someone stepped out onto the porch. Somewhere, a radio played faintly from another room, carrying a tune by Simon and Garfunkel, or maybe the Carpenters. Inside, your family gathered the way families used to, without hurry, without distraction. The living room was small, but it held everything that mattered. The sofa sagged in the middle. The carpet had a few worn patches, and the lamp on the side table gave off a soft amber glow. That light made everything look a little more golden, a little more forgiving. Your father had been saving for months, maybe longer. He'd circle ads in the newspaper. New color sets now available, they said, in big, proud letters. You could tell it wasn't just about owning a new machine, it was about bringing the world closer. Because in those days, television wasn't background noise. It was an event, something families gathered around, like a campfire glowing in the middle of their own home. That afternoon, the delivery truck came. You might still picture it, big white letters on the side, two men stepping carefully out, carrying a large wooden box wrapped in brown paper. The neighbors peeked out from their porches, curious. "Is that what I think it is?" someone might have said. Inside the house, there was a faint excitement in the air. Your mother moved a few things aside. Her porcelain vase, a stack of magazines, a bowl of fruit that had sat on the old TV for years. The room smelled faintly of lemon polish and the day's dinner cooling in the kitchen. When the men unwrapped the new television, the colors of its polished wood gleamed in the light. The screen looked impossibly smooth, as if it were holding a secret it was about to reveal. Your father tested the knobs, his brow furrowed, his voice calm but proud. "We'll see it tonight," he said. "First show in color." You remember how everyone leaned in just to look at the blank screen. Even before it came to life, it already felt like something magical. The youngest child traced a finger along the edge of the frame, whispering, "It's so shiny." The day seemed to stretch endlessly before that evening arrived. Maybe you spent it outside tossing a ball with a friend, or lying in the grass and watching clouds drift by. But your thoughts kept drifting back to that living room. What would it look like? What would the colors feel like? Would they glow differently? Would they make the world seem new again? As dusk fell, the house grew quiet in that familiar, comforting way. The streetlights blinked on one by one. You could hear crickets beginning their nightly song outside the window. Someone poured a glass of iced tea. Someone else adjusted the rabbit ear antenna on top of the set. Your father fiddled with the dial, turning it slowly until the static softened into sound. The room filled with the faint hum of electricity in anticipation. "Almost time," he murmured. You could feel the air thicken with wonder. And when the broadcast finally began, when that first burst of color flickered across the screen, oh, it was like magic. Bright reds, glowing blues, and soft pinks spilled into the room as if a rainbow had found its way indoors. Everyone gasped softly. Someone laughed. Someone else whispered, "Look at that dress. Look at those skies." It was as if the world had been quietly waiting for this moment, holding its breath, and now it could exhale in color. You might not remember the name of the show, but you remember how it felt. The way the light danced on your family's faces, the way shadows turned golden on the walls. It wasn't just television. It was time travel. It was possibility. It was hope, flickering softly in the glow of a brand new world. You sat there, hardly blinking, afraid to miss even a second. Somewhere deep down, you knew this was one of those nights you'd carry with you forever, the kind that stays tucked away, like an old photograph in your heart. And as the evening wore on, as colors shimmered and stories unfolded, the house around you faded into quiet contentment. There was no rush to go anywhere, no need to check a clock, just the warmth of home, the hum of the screen, and the simple joy of seeing something truly new for the first time. The picture flickered for a moment, a soft halo of color blooming across the glass. Your father adjusted the antenna again carefully, as if tuning an instrument. The sound steadied, and suddenly, there it was, a world unlike anything you had seen before. Faces were warm and alive, dresses shimmered, blue skies seemed to stretch on forever. You could almost feel the sunlight pouring through the screen. The family sat shoulder to shoulder, the glow painting everyone's faces in soft tones. The youngest leaned forward, mouth slightly open, as if trying to step right into that world. Your mother smiled, her eyes bright, a quiet joy rising in her chest. She whispered, "It's beautiful, isn't it?" And your father just nodded, not wanting to break the spell. Outside, the neighborhood was wrapped in stillness. A few houses down, you could see the faint flicker of another new color set through a curtain, like tiny stars scattered across the block. The air smelled faintly of night-blooming jasmine and fresh-cut grass. Somewhere, a dog barked once and fell quiet again. Inside, the living room felt smaller now, but warmer. The television's soft hum filled the space, a low, comforting rhythm like a heartbeat. The coffee table was cluttered with teacups, a bowl of popcorn, and a plate of sugar cookies that someone had forgotten to pass around. But nobody minded. Everyone's eyes stayed fixed on the screen. You might remember how strange it felt to see familiar faces on television now colored with life. The news anchor's tie was red. red like the stripes on a flag. The cartoons were no longer just shapes and lines, they danced and shimmered with color. Even the commercials seemed like tiny pieces of magic. A yellow box of cereal, a green bottle of dish soap, a bright red car gliding down a road that seemed to stretch forever. It wasn't just entertainment, it was connection. You felt for the first time that the world out there was vast and full of possibilities. Maybe one day you'd travel beyond your town, see those blue skies in person, taste those bright summers that glowed on the screen. For now, though, you were content just to sit and watch, feeling time slow to a tender rhythm. The adults spoke in soft tones. "Can you believe it?" someone said. "Just look at that," another whispered. You remember how, now and then, your father would glance over at you, a quiet pride in his eyes, as if he knew that tonight something had changed forever. The color television wasn't only new, it was hopeful. It made the future feel reachable. It painted the next decade in shades of promise. For many families, it was the first real sign that life could become easier, brighter, even beautiful again after the long gray years that came before. You leaned your head on the arm of the couch, the soft ticking of the wall clock marking time between breaths. The screen flickered with laughter and music, and for a moment, it felt like your living room was part of something larger, some invisible thread that connected millions of other homes across the country, all seeing the same colors for the very first time. As the evening deepened, the glow of the TV mixed with the amber light of the table lamp. Shadows stretched gently across the floor, curling around your feet. You could feel the cool fabric of the couch against your fingertips, the warmth of the room gathering softly around you like a blanket. The world outside had gone completely still, but inside it was alive with color and quiet awe. When the program ended, no one moved for a while. The credits rolled, soft music playing, and you could see the reflection of your family in the darkening screen, faces calm, eyes shining, each person lost in thought. Then your father cleared his throat softly. "Well," he said, smiling, "what do you think?" Everyone spoke at once. Words tumbled out. "Amazing," "so real," "did you see the ocean?" And laughter filled the room. Your mother said that she'd been on a small vacation without ever leaving the house. And you didn't have the words. You just knew you'd never forget that feeling. Later, when the lights were turned off and the house settled into its nightly hush, you lay in bed with your mind still glowing. The images replayed behind your eyelids. The red of the car, the green of the fields, the blue of the sky. You could still hear the faint echo of applause from the television, fading gently into the hum of night. You thought about how the world could hold so many colors, how they'd been there all along, just waiting for someone to find a way to show them. It made you feel small, but in a good way, like part of something beautiful and endless. The crickets sang their quiet lullaby outside. A soft breeze lifted the curtain. You turned on your side and smiled in the dark, the afterglow of that first color night lingering behind your closed eyes. And as you drifted off, you didn't know that years later, when technology changed again and again, that moment would still remain, untouched, glowing softly in your memory like a lantern that never burned out. Morning came softly, as it always did. The pale sunlight spilled through the curtains, golden and tender, as if even the sun had turned a little more colorful overnight. You blinked awake, half expecting to see the glow of that new television still shimmering on the walls. The memory of it felt so real, so close, that for a moment you almost believed the room was filled with color all on its own. Down the hall, you could hear the familiar sounds of your household waking up. The whistle of the kettle, the clatter of dishes, the slow, sleepy voices of people greeting a brand new day. But there was something different this morning, a quiet excitement in the air, a feeling that something wonderful had begun and wasn't going to fade. You joined your family in the kitchen, where the smell of toast and coffee wrapped around you like a blanket. Your father sat at the table with his newspaper, glasses perched low on his nose, pretending to read, but clearly thinking about last night. He looked up, smiling. "Can you believe it?" he said. "After all these years, color right there in our living room." Your mother laughed softly, setting down a plate of eggs. "I couldn't stop thinking about it," she said. "It felt like a dream." The youngest still had syrup on their chin, grinning as they announced, "I dreamed in color last night." Everyone laughed, and for a moment, the kitchen felt brighter than usual, like some of that glow from the television had stayed behind, clinging gently to the corners of your home. Outside, the world looked much the same front lawns, the same mailboxes, the same familiar sound of a screen door slamming somewhere down the street. But in your heart, it felt different. You caught yourself noticing the green of the trees, the red of a parked car, the soft yellow of morning light reflecting off the pavement. It was as though the world itself had changed overnight, becoming sharper, more alive. All day long, neighbors stopped by. Some came just to talk about the news, but you could see the spark in their eyes, the same curiosity that had kept your family awake late into the night. One of them, Mr. Harris from next door, asked, "Was it really that good?" And your father grinned. "Better," he said. "You should see it for yourself." That evening, the living room was full again. Chairs borrowed from the dining table, people leaning against the doorway, kids sitting cross-legged on the carpet. The air hummed with anticipation, soft chatter mixing with the faint smell of popcorn. It felt almost like a holiday, one of those rare nights when the entire neighborhood seemed to share the same heartbeat. When the show began, the room fell silent. This time, you didn't just watch the screen, you watched the faces of everyone around you. Their eyes reflected the colors dancing across the glass: blue, gold, crimson, and in each face you could see wonder, just as you'd felt it the night before. Someone whispered, "It's like magic." Someone else nodded, unable to look away. For years afterward, you'd remember that particular moment, not just for the television itself, but for what it meant. It wasn't just about pictures in color. It was about a feeling of togetherness. The world had grown larger, but somehow your community had grown closer. People had something new to share, a small joy that belonged to everyone. You can still picture the way your father stood arms crossed, quietly proud that his living room had become the first color house on the block. The kids whispered that he must have been rich, though he wasn't. He was just hopeful, and hope in those days was worth more than money. After the guests left and the night settled again, you sat alone in front of the silent television. The reflection of the lamp glimmered softly on its dark screen. You reached out and touched the smooth glass, feeling the faint static buzz against your fingertips. It was strange how something so new could already feel so personal, so deeply a part of your life. The television became a kind of hearth in the weeks that followed. Every evening, your family gathered without fail. Some nights you watched variety shows, some nights the news, some nights just the test pattern before bedtime, but it never lost its magic. Even when the stories faded from your mind, you remembered the light, the warmth, the way colors seemed to whisper quietly, "You're alive, you're here." The neighbors began to get their own sets too, one by one. You'd walk home from school and see the soft flicker of color through curtains, a sign that another household had joined the new age. People waved at one another a little more often. Conversations began with, "Did you see that last night?" or what a show. The screens didn't pull people apart yet, they drew them together. And for you, those nights became small chapters of growing up. You learned about the world not from textbooks, but from the faces and voices that glowed from that screen. You watched newscasters talk about places you'd never been. You saw sunsets from faraway countries, laughter in languages you didn't understand, and you began to realize how vast the world could be. But always, no matter how big the world seemed, it circled back to that small living room. Home, the place where everything began. The soft hum of the television became part of the soundtrack of your youth, blending with the ticking of the clock and the heartbeat of family life. Even now, when you think back on those evenings, it's not the shows you remember most. It's the feeling, the closeness, the gentle hush of the room, the soft glow that turned ordinary nights into something timeless. And maybe as you lie here tonight, you can feel it again. The light, the laughter, the sense that something wonderful can arrive at any moment, unannounced, and fill your world with color. The weeks passed, and soon the color television became part of your family's rhythm, like the evening meal or the quiet sound of the clock ticking in the hallway. Each night after dinner, someone would say, "Shall we watch something?" And that was all it took. Plates would be cleared, lights dimmed, and the whole house seemed to settle into a soft, expectant calm. The glow from the screen became your new sunset. You remember how the air would feel just before a favorite program began. The faint hum, the gentle buzz of static, the way your father's hand rested on the dial as he waited for the right channel to appear. There was no remote control yet, no fast forwarding, no skipping ahead. Everything came in its time, and you learned to wait. That waiting, in a way, made it all the more precious. Sometimes your mother would bring a small tray of cookies, the scent of butter and vanilla drifting through the room. Other nights, she'd knit quietly while the show played, her needles clicking in a rhythm that somehow matched the flicker of light. The children sprawled on the floor, their elbows propped on soft cushions, eyes wide and unblinking. The grown-ups sat back, relaxed, their faces lit by the gentle hues of the new world unfolding in front of them. The colors changed everything, not just the pictures, but the way people felt. You began to notice the blue of a hero's jacket, the gold of a sunset in the background, the green of summer grass that looked almost alive. For the first time, you could feel the warmth of the day or the chill of a rainstorm, all through that glowing box. And somehow, those little things made the world outside look different too. You began noticing colors you'd never really seen before. The deep crimson of your mother's apron, the pale yellow of the curtains, the soft, fading green of the garden hose by the back steps. The television didn't just change the living room, it changed your eyes. It made the ordinary shimmer. Sometimes your family invited friends over for special programs, a Sunday concert, a Christmas broadcast, or a big parade. The house would fill with quiet chatter, the kind that rises and falls like a tide. When the show began, everyone fell silent together, breathing in unison, as though the screen had drawn them into its slow, golden rhythm. You might remember the commercials too, the jingles, the smiles, the voices that promised a better world just within reach. Back then, even advertisements had their charm. They were cheerful, hopeful, painted in colors so bright you couldn't help but believe that maybe, yes, life really could be that simple. Then came the nights when you were alone with the television, long after everyone else had gone to bed. You'd turn the volume low, sitting cross-legged on the carpet, watching reruns or the late news. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of the set and the distant sound of crickets through the open window. The light from the screen cast gentle shadows that seemed to sway in time with your breathing. In those quiet hours, you didn't just watch television, you dreamed through it. You saw cities you'd never been to, oceans you could almost feel against your skin. You imagined yourself stepping right through the glass, walking into that other world, bathed in soft color and endless light. Sometimes, when the broadcast ended and the screen faded to gray, you'd sit there for a while longer, letting your thoughts drift. The static hiss became like waves on a shore, pulling you towards sleep. You didn't know it then, but those moments, the soft light, the hum of electricity, the peace that followed, were teaching you the rhythm of stillness. A rhythm that, even now, your mind remembers when the world feels too loud. The years rolled on, and so did the shows. Sitcoms, variety hours, talk programs, each one marking time in its own gentle way. You could tell the seasons by the colors on the screen. Bright reds and golds in autumn, snowy blues in winter, green meadows in spring. Every family on the block seemed to have their favorite night, their favorite show, their favorite ritual. Some watched together after church, others tuned in while folding laundry or fixing a late supper. But no matter how different the households, everyone shared that same quiet wonder, the feeling that the world was both closer and bigger all at once. And for children of that era like you were then, television became a kind of storyteller, whispering the future into living rooms across America. You learned what people dreamed of, what they laughed at, what they feared. You didn't realize it, but those flickering colors were shaping how you'd remember the past. You grew up, of course. The television changed too. New sets, larger screens, sharper images. But the first one, the wooden cabinet with its faint hum and curved glass, stayed in your memory like a dear friend. Even long after it stopped working, you could still recall its glow, the way it gathered your family close, the way it made every evening feel like a small celebration. Sometimes you'd pass an appliance store and see rows of color televisions lined up in the window, each one showing the same scene. You'd stop for a moment, smile, and think of that first night, that first gasp of wonder, that first moment when the world turned from black and white to something infinitely more alive. And maybe even now, when you close your eyes at night, you can still feel that warm light flickering softly in your memory, the hum of it, the safety of it, the quiet joy that came from simply being together, watching the world bloom before your eyes. You can still hear it, the hush that fell over the room right before the picture appeared. The test pattern had been showing for what felt like forever, its gray lines humming softly, a faint buzz in the air. Then, all at once, the pattern faded, and the world bloomed into color. The crowd on the screen wore bright blues, deep reds, sunny yellows that shimmered in the glow. It was as if someone had lifted a veil from your eyes. The soft click of the dial, the gentle crackle of the tubes warming, it all blended into the music of that evening. You leaned forward without meaning to. Everyone did. Aunt Marjorie gasped, her hand flying to her heart. "Look at that dress," she said, pointing at the woman spinning across the stage. You remember your father chuckling under his breath, his glasses catching the flicker of the screen. The whole room smelled faintly of popcorn and dust, ordinary things. But that night, they felt touched by magic. The picture was grainy, yes, and the colors sometimes too bright, yet it didn't matter. You were watching real color come alive right there in your own living room. For a moment, you forgot to breathe. The reds looked almost alive, pulsing gently. The blues deepened until they felt like little pieces of sky. You could feel the weight of time pausing. The hum of the house quieted, the night outside holding its breath. Only the soft rhythm of the screen light danced across the faces around you, painting them in delicate shades of gold and rose. Then came laughter, sweet, spontaneous laughter. Your younger self couldn't help it. Something about those bright scenes, those dancing hues, made everything seem suddenly lighter. The family leaned closer, shoulder to shoulder, as though warmth could be shared more fully that way. For once, no one thought about tomorrow's chores, the bills, or the long week ahead. All those little worries seemed to drift away into the glow of that color screen. Outside, the world remained dark and quiet, the street lamps humming faintly. But inside, it was as though a miniature sunrise had unfolded. The living room had never felt so alive. You watched the tiny figures on the screen parade through scenes that once seemed unreachable. Bright city streets, sunny beaches, parades where people waved flags that shimmered like jewels. It was not just entertainment, it was a window into a world you had only imagined before. Your mother's eyes glistened a little. Maybe she was thinking of her own childhood, of the years when everything had been black and white. "Imagine what comes next," she whispered softly. You nodded, though you weren't sure what she meant then. It would take years before you understood that what came next was you, growing up, carrying that sense of wonder into new decades filled with change. In the corner, the dog stirred, sighing as it curled into the rug's edge. The smell of the wood floor, a faint trace of wax and thyme, mixed with the buttery scent of popcorn. The moment was ordinary and extraordinary all at once, a slice of life that would never come again in quite the same way. Your brother, ever the curious one, had brought out a set of colored pencils earlier that evening, declaring he could match the TV's colors perfectly. Now he held one up to the screen, comparing the shade. The room filled with quiet laughter again. The pencils would never quite match, but the effort was somehow more wonderful than success. You remember how the light shifted as the program went on, subtle, calming. The novelty faded just enough to let comfort settle in. The rhythm of the show, the cadence of the announcer's voice, began to feel almost like a lullaby. The flicker of color reflected in your eyes, softer now, gentler. You didn't know it, but that night was imprinting itself deep within you, becoming one of those golden memories that rise when sleep is near. Maybe you drifted off for a moment, your head leaning against the sofa cushion, the sound of your family's quiet conversation blending with the television's hum. There was something soothing about that combination, human warmth and gentle technology coexisting peacefully. You were safe. The world was simple. Years later, when color television became normal, almost invisible in its perfection, you would think back to that first night. How everyone gasped and smiled, how the air itself seemed charged with wonder. You would realize that what made it beautiful wasn't the invention, but the way it gathered people together, how it turned a living room into a shared dream. Now, lying here listening to this memory unfold, you can almost feel that same glow again. Maybe you can even sense the faint warmth on your cheek, the buzz of the tubes, the whisper of your mother's voice saying, "Look at that blue, it's just like the sky in June." You breathe slowly, evenly. The tension in your shoulders loosens a little. This too is a kind of color, the color of remembering, of being held gently by the past. The glow might not come from a television screen anymore. It comes from inside you, from the stories you carry, from the quiet magic of nights like that one. Let that light stay with you now. Let it soften the edges of your thoughts. You don't have to go anywhere or do anything. Just drift back to that living room where the world first turned to color, and every face you loved was there, glowing softly in the new light. The night deepened outside the window, but you barely noticed. The color television flickered like a tiny campfire in the corner of the room, keeping everyone warm in its glow. The program had changed. Now it was a variety show, something cheerful and silly, with bright costumes and smiling faces. The laughter on screen was joined by soft chuckles from your family. It was easy laughter, the kind that comes when the day's work is done and there's nothing left to prove. Your father leaned back in his chair, his shoes still by the door, his hand resting on the armrest in that quiet, strong way you remember. The flicker of the screen reflected off his wedding band. He looked peaceful for once. So did your mother, her eyes half closed, a faint smile curving her lips as if the colors on the screen were painting her dreams before they even arrived. You caught yourself watching them more than the television. The faces of the people you loved were somehow brighter than the glowing reds and blues before you. You didn't know then that you'd remember this exact light on their faces for decades to come. That you'd return to this moment again and again, especially on nights when you couldn't sleep, just like tonight. The announcer on the program said something about the future of broadcasting. Then his voice carried that old-fashioned confidence, the kind that sounded like a promise. You didn't understand the words fully then, but they made you feel like tomorrow was full of bright possibility. The grown-ups nodded, half listening. The children leaned closer. The air seemed to hum with quiet hope. And then the show faded into a gentle tune, a song about dreams, about seeing the world in new light. The melody was simple, sweet, like something from a lullaby your mother once hummed when you were small. You remember her reaching for the remote, hesitating for a moment before turning down the volume just enough to let the music drift through the room. Time moves differently in memories. What once felt endless now fits inside a single heartbeat. But that night seemed to stretch beautifully on. You remember the shadows softening, the lights outside dimming, the faint creak of the house settling into rest. The warmth of the screen's glow lingered on your skin. Someone, maybe your brother, had fallen asleep right on the carpet, his hand still tucked under his chin. The dog was snoring softly near his feet. You were drowsy too, but you didn't want to close your eyes just yet. Something inside you knew that this was more than a simple evening. It was the kind of night that marks the end of one era and the beginning of another. Your father finally spoke, his voice calm and low. "Pretty soon," he said, "everything will be in color." He didn't mean just the television. You didn't understand that then, but you do now. He meant life itself, the dreams, the changes, the decades that were waiting just beyond the horizon of that soft, glowing screen. He was right. The world did fill with color after that. Bright cars, bold clothes, vivid music, and ideas that painted everything new. But that first burst of color in your home, that was where it began. The quiet birth of modern dreams. You remember your mother switching off the television at last, the screen dimmed to a dot, shrinking until it disappeared. For a moment, the room was perfectly still. No hum, no voices, no motion, only the quiet echo of shared wonder. Then came the small sounds that always followed the end of a family night. The rustle of blankets, the soft squeak of a chair, the faint whisper of good night. You stood, stretching your legs, still half dreaming. The room looked different now, colored not by technology, but by memory. The walls seemed warmer, the furniture softer, the very air carrying the lingering glow of something precious. You wanted to hold on to it forever. Even now, as the years have slipped gently by, you can still see it when you close your eyes. The glow of that first color picture. Your parents' quiet smiles, the way the night outside waited patiently for you all to finish marbling. Those images are painted not on film, but on your heart. They're the colors that never fade. If you listen closely, you can almost hear the hum again, the soft electric sigh that used to fill the air before every program began. That sound was the start of so many evenings, so many small miracles. It's still there, tucked somewhere deep in your memory, a sound that says home. Let it guide you now, like it once guided the glow across your living room walls. The same calm hum, the same warm flicker of light. It's okay to rest now. The world can turn quietly while you drift, as it always has. The colors will be waiting when you wake, soft and gentle, just as you remember them. You're safe here, within this story, within this moment. The years have carried you far, but they haven't taken the beauty of those firsts. The first television, the first color, the first sense that the world could be something bigger, brighter, and full of promise. Breathe slowly. Let your chest rise and fall like the rhythm of that long ago night. The hush between commercials, the hum before a broadcast, the quiet laughter of family, it all blends now into the same lullaby that once filled your home. Let that sound carry you into sleep, softly and kindly. You've come full circle, from that glowing living room to this quiet moment under your blanket. And the light is still with you, not from a screen, but from the peace of remembering. And now, dear listener, the screen in your memory begins to fade. The soft hum quiets, the colors dim gently, not vanishing, but settling, like dusk falling over a familiar hometown. You can still see it, can't you? The living room of your youth, glowing faintly with laughter and warmth, the scent of buttered popcorn, the gentle ticking of the wall clock, the sound of someone stifling a yawn before whispering goodnight. You were there. You lived through that moment when the world changed, not just on the screen, but inside your heart. The first time you saw color television, you saw the promise of everything that would follow. A brighter world, a fuller life. And tonight, as you lie there with your eyes heavy and your breath slowing, that same light is still with you. You've carried it through every decade. The reds of autumn leaves, the blue of birthday candles, the gold of morning sunlight through your kitchen window. Every shade, every tone, a reminder that life itself was always richer than you could have imagined back in that black and white world. And maybe that's what makes it so peaceful to remember. Take one more slow breath. Let your shoulders sink. Feel the quiet ease that comes with knowing you've seen and lived through so many colors of time. You don't need to do anything more tonight. You've earned this rest, this calm. The memories will keep glowing softly in your mind, like the faint echo of a television left on low in another room, comforting and far away. The world outside can wait until morning. Tonight, you can simply drift. The same way you once drifted off in front of the family TV, a blanket pulled up to your chin, the world gently humming around you. You're safe now. You're home again. Thank you for spending this little journey with me tonight, walking back through the years to a night when the future looked like a field of color waiting to unfold. These memories are pieces of who you are, little treasures that never fade, no matter how far time carries you. If this story brought you a sense of peace, if it helped you remember something warm, something good, I'd love to hear from you. You can leave a comment, share a thought, or simply tell me what kind of story you'd like to dream through next time. Each memory you share becomes another gentle light for Sleepy Trails, guiding others who may be wandering awake tonight, looking for comfort in the past. And if you haven't already, you're always welcome to subscribe to Sleepy Trails so you'll have a soft place to return to. Each night, a new story, a familiar voice, a gentle reminder that you are never alone in the quiet hours. For now, just rest. Let the colors fade softly behind your eyes. Let sleep come like the slow dimming of a screen at the end of a beautiful show. Good night, my friend. Sweet dreams, and may your trail tonight be peaceful and kind.